Oh, hi. Come here, child. Yes. Let me tell you a tale of the past. Yes. The epic story of Mitosis. Once upon a time, there was a kingdom called Seldom. Seldom was ruled by a king. It had a decent population and enough nearby resources to last a long time. As time progressed, the kingdom became richer and richer as its economy improved from trade. As a result of this, the population started to grow. Soon, the population doubled. The new generation had different opinions than the old generation. They wanted change. The election was between two people, the king and the king's twin brother. Today was supposed to be the election day for the kingdom, but then disaster struck. The palace had been sieged while the king's military was out training in the far lands of the kingdom. The election was postponed to tomorrow.
The next day, the election was held. The poll was tied. Half of the people wanted one king, and the other half wanted the other. The two kings decided to meet up and discuss who would lead the kingdom. At first, the discussion went smoothly, but then things became violent. The king's general had to order His Majesty's military to step in and separate them. The kings retreated back to their newly built palace. After the incident, the king and his brother decided to split the kingdom into two kingdoms. Each kingdom took half of the population and the military.
The story of Mitosis. Yes, child. Did you enjoy it? I hope you did. Now give me $10 for listening to this book. Where's my $10?
No, this bad boy can fit so much scam in it. Want to hear a true story? Hear the true story of Meiosis.
That's just a copy of Mitosis.
There was once a republic called the Republic of Diploid. Diploid was an unusual democracy with 4 political parties. 2 left-wing parties, the Communist and Socialist parties, and 2 right-wing parties, the Fascist and Conservative Party. The leaders of the parties each had a descendant. These 4 parties ruled the country in unison, with each controlling their own piece of land, population, and military. However, just like the kingdom of Seldom, the republic's population began to overflow. The land was running out, and the people again wanted change. The parties of each wing wanted to be the sole party of that wing, as they felt that their partner party was not good enough. So an election was held to determine which party was to represent each wing.
As result day rolled around, people were getting more and more anxious. More and more quarrels happened each day. One quarrel was so bad that a portion of the parliament building collapsed. Each party's military was occupied with suppressing other revolts on the northern and southern ends of the kingdom and were away at the time it happened. Finally, it was the day to reveal the election results. The parties met in the town center, with parties of the same wing sitting together, as usual. When the result was revealed, the citizens were shocked. The Communist Party and the Conservative Party had won by a landslide, with more than 90% of the votes favoring. But the people knew that this was not the case, since that margin was suspiciously large. Turns out, the Communist Party and Conservative Party had rigged the election. Upon hearing this, the civilians were furious. Rebellions were formed in an attempt to dismiss the leaders of the parties. However, the two parties accepted something like this to happen and bribed military generals beforehand. Soldiers came marching out of nowhere and stopped the revolution. They guided the leaders back to the safety of an underground bunker. The other 2 leaders, afraid of being assassinated by their counterparts, were also guided back to their bunkers.
Despite the shenanigery of the 2 fraud parties, they still had dedicated followers who wished to remain with them. Most of them were civilians, but some were soldiers and army generals. They knew that they could no longer keep the peace between the other parties, so they decided that they would negotiate with the other 2 parties to separate the country into 2 new ones. After days of intense negotiating, the parties had finally agreed to split. After many years, the 2 countries had finally settled down, but it was time for growth. The country shifted its focus towards the economy, but history repeated itself. The population doubled, and again, available land declined. Since the countries are very similar, we'll just focus on one, the country ruled by the fascist and socialist parties.
On the day of the announcement, the leaders, along with their sons, were led to the town center for the announcement. It was a painful decision to make, but a crucial one. Upon hearing the news, the 2 princes were horrified and anxious about their future tasks. But you'll do just fine, was what the leaders said to their descendants. After a teary goodbye, the princes were guided by the military to their homes to collect their belongings before leaving to govern their own country. Unbeknownst to them, the other two parties did the same thing. Where there was once one country, now there were four.
That's the story of Mitosis.
Wow, that's pretty sad.
I know, right?
This is so sad. Alexa, play Despacito.